Welcome back. If you're not a subscriber, you probably don't know what happened in episode 10. The subscribers, the grumpy old men, the salty sea dogs and silverbacks, who are regulars on the channel, are waiting for this episode, where I take you through exactly what happened after Storm Eowyn, and then been hit with the second storm the following day. The hull was breached on the port side. The rising tide and the waves on the starboard side hull had ground the port side into the rocks. There was no way to know how much damage was actually done, other than gauge it by how quickly the bilge pumps could get the water out. Eventually we would discover that she was holed in 4 places.
They'll come down without a fight, I can tell you. This is a race against the clock.
With the hull full of water, it was abundantly clear that one more tide would destroy her on the rocks. I made a cup of coffee. I gave it some serious thought, and I made a decision. I needed her pumped out, and I needed to float her off, and I needed to do it urgently. Getting just enough water out to be able to get her afloat and back out onto the moorings. From this moment on, she would be sinking on every rising tide, and I would be responsible for keeping her pumped out until I could find the holes, make repairs, and that wasn't gonna come easy. But there was no other choice.
It feels horrible.
I would have to go to work, and every low tide be back to pump her out, recharge the batteries, and maintain the bilge pumps. This was going to be a nightmare. Even if I could have been able to crane her out and take her to a yard, I wasn't sure she'd ever make it back, or if I could make it back from that. This was the only way. It would be entirely down to me to prevent her from going under. And because she's in such an isolated location, I'm fully aware that the bilge pumps would be draining the batteries faster than I could keep them charged. The top priority, there wasn't going to be a minute of the day that didn't involve revolving around saving Stormdancer. This is a tidal mudflat, and the tide is now dropping. The first order of business is to check these rocks to get some indication of where the holes are. The next order of business is to make sure she doesn't sink faster than the tide is dropping. And then I can see if I can address the problem. Now look closely.
Okay, the current situation is I'm off the rocks. I'm leaking, and port side hull. Judging by what I can see on the rocks, we've had a grind through and a crack. The bilge pumps were able to empty the hull out to get her afloat, to get her off the rocks. Limited battery capacity. You've always looked at the battery capacity unless you're running a generator. So the bilge pumps can't drain it indefinitely, so I've stopped them. Which means at the moment it's floating faster than it's sinking. Anybody home? I said, I'm assuming you're closed. I've sprung a leak in my power assistant steering fluid. I need something like cooking oil.
Can you just give him one of those, no?
What?
Bring it back to me, can you?
Yeah, certainly I can bring you one back. Thank you. Legendary. When are you open again?
Hopefully, the freezers have only started working there, so hopefully within, if we can, in the next hour or two. But we're probably with our payments at the minute.
Yeah, we're coming back up the road. No, I knew you were down. I've just left the boat break for you in the storm. She beats. Then the second stack,
Right.
she's whole. The tide, we've got her off the tide. There's holes in which she's sinking. I'm not about like a maniac. Listen, thank you. It's not quite hydraulic fluid. But it's better than a poke in the eye with a sharp stick. It wouldn't do to run life on easy, I can say it. I'll suddenly have power assistant steering. Right. Why cooking oil? Because it's cheap oil. Long term, useless. However, worth realizing that the only purpose for the oil is it's hydraulic, as a non-compressible, which cooking oil is better to create it doesn't last, but it'll last longer than I'm leaking it. The system will need flushed. But right now I've got steering back. Okay, so for now I've just grabbed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 CT1. This is a nightmare. So, 2 gas bottles for the blowtorch. I've picked up fiberglass resin hardener. We have 5 tubes of C1. And a gun for it. I've picked up expanding foam as well, which is never a good thing on a boat, but it might actually prove useful. Ideas are going as to how to solve this problem. Next stop, auto parts. I have an idea. Auto parts, pick up another battery, a car battery, because I actually have a marine battery in the Jeep. So if I pick up a car battery from the Jeep, frees up a marine battery, I've lifted additional bilge pumps and float switches. This has been a losing battle in the making from the get-go. Absolutely relentless.
Finally, arriving back down to Stormdancer with the tide headed out, she needs pumped out again, which is to be expected. Then down into the bilge keels, the V, with a sponge to get that completely dried out. The plan now is to seal under the bulkheads with expanding foam, thus splitting the hull into 3 separate sections, so that I can get to see on the next tide which area it is that's filling, instead of the entire hull coming up evenly. I'm well aware that the expanding foam doesn't really achieve anything, but in this instance, it's just the quickest way to seal under the bulkheads, to split the hull into 3 parts. Then I'm going to get to see on the next tide coming in where the water is coming from, whether it's front, mid, or the rear section here. Now this might seem counterintuitive, but because I'm actually settling in the soft mud and the bilge keels are actually going down into the mud and she's sitting on the lower curve of the hull, at the moment there's no way to actually check from the outside to see where the damage is. So the first priority right now, above all else, is to find out where the water's coming in and make it stop.
Seriously, can this be? Yep.
As the tide rises, I can now see that the front compartment in the head is completely dry. The walkway, companionway area is also completely dry. And yet, on the outside, the tide is almost up to the waterline. I've now managed to contain the area that's filling to one section, and that section is under the aft doghouse bunk. And if good fortune goes my way, having put expanding foam under the two bulkheads, the four sections that I can show you in the blueprints will make more sense. This area, if I can contain the water to there, it's not much bigger than a fuel tanker or a water tank would be, and certainly not enough to sink her on a single tide. On the blueprints, it'll make an awful lot more sense. So we have what shows as four sections, and it is four areas, but there's only one of them is sealed. It has been a frantic kind of a day, but we've managed to go from the hull itself being completely filled with water, thanks to the expanding foam under the plywood bulkheads, to now getting to find out exactly where she's filling as the tide's coming in. There's method in the madness. By containing to this one small area, the bilge pumps get to pump out quickly. Less water. Finally, I'm able to call it a day, knowing that she's going to be able to survive until morning on the next tide with the bilge pump running. 28th of January. By the time I get back down to Stormdancer after work and everything else that needed doing, I arrive on board to discover the bilge pumps have been working flat out and drained the battery on board.
I've given it some consideration. Part of my feeling on this is if I can seal that box, I don't think the water's coming over the top of it, but if I can seal that box from the water coming into the rest of the hull, that it's contained to there, that solves an awful lot of problems here too. But this started on Friday morning with the storm, and we're still afloat.
I can see that the furthest aft compartment is the one that's actually filled there. So the water has cascaded through back into the companionway when the bilge pumps died. This tells me I need to get a temporary bilge pump into that back compartment. And I also need to find some way of blocking the bilge where it goes into the compartment behind that. It gives me an idea, and it's not going to be pretty. The compartment behind this locker is filled with polystyrene block as a flotation area and clearly leaking there. If I can stop the flow forward into this box that we're looking at and put a bilge pump in there, I can reduce the amount of water that needs pumped out substantially. What I'm going to do is stuff a cloth into there, silicone it into place, and let it strain through from the compartment behind into this open locker. Put a bilge pump into that, and that'll contain the amount of water that needs bilged out, and it should be sufficiently reducing the flow to be able to get through the next couple of tides on the bilge pumps. As if dealing with Stormdancer wasn't enough to contend with, we have this. I believe the expression is "this is getting old." Once again with the cooking oil. But I'm optimistic. Last night's work down on the boat should free me up to be able to go and get the car dealt with today. However, to do so means I need to be able to get to a mechanic that can deal with it and who'll make an effort to actually get me booked in and get it dealt with pronto.
Middle of all this, one man, a little Yaris belonged to the mechanic that I use. Meanwhile, the Freelander's up in the ramp. Just can't afford not to have the Jeep up and running. In the crisis, it's about knowing who's where, that has what completely neat things in it. The guys at Belfast Land Rover Centre, which actually isn't in Belfast, it's just outside of Saintfield, have gone the extra mile for me, even though they were past closing time, for me to be able to go and pick up that pipe. And the mechanic, to be fair, the legendary Roy Hewlett Preparations. Roy prepares rally cars, and he's not like just going into an ordinary mechanics. I mean, as far as Roy's concerned, it's either right or it's wrong. His reputation depends on it. And over the years, I have found that a mechanic like that is worth his weight in gold, because you go in with the problem's fixed properly. And you pay him for his talents, you pay him for his skills, and you drive out of there knowing it's done. And I can tell you that Roy's place is backed up to the hilt of cars waiting to be seen. And they've just dropped everything for me to get the Freelander in, get it up on the map, and get this job done. You guys are legends. It's hard to convey, but it's a race against time. I mean, I know that I need to get back down on the low tide to check how the boat is. Too tight since last night. I could go back to it being exactly the same and perhaps no better. But that too tight window has bought me an opportunity to deal with the car that is also critical to the whole thing. It's a bit of a lull in the relentless ongoing against the clock thing that the race against tides has been creating. And it's difficult to try and wind down and appreciate that. And if you're watching from the outside and not actually immersed in this, I imagine it would be hard to relate. But right now, this has been the most peaceful part of getting something done. It's also critical this is done before the next low tide at 9 o'clock tonight for me to be down there with the generator. The water level is high in here. It isn't seeping. So how high does that get before it fills into here?
And the answer to that question was as high as it likes. Hence, 5 layers of fiberglass. No more leak in that compartment. Finally, we're getting somewhere. And you may well ask, how on earth do you fiberglass a hull when it's wet? And the answer is simple. You don't. But when you've an old friend that you said goodbye to at the 18th of April last year, who was the best fiberglass man in the country, who worked on industrial water tanks, his trick was, because they couldn't knock a building down to get a tank out, they would lower the water in the tank and he would go in with a blowtorch, dry the fiberglass, being careful not to set it on fire, and when it was dry, he would glass the tank. Those of you who have watched this far and are subscribed are welcome to that little tidbit. Of course, there'll always be the other ones who just randomly happen into the channel and watch 5 minutes, and they can do without knowing that little trick. Just as I'm starting to feel optimistic, the car is fixed, we've managed to get things under control down here on Stormdancer, but at 3 o'clock in the morning I got a phone call. One of those phone calls you never want to get. As if things couldn't get any worse. Bad news about one of the fur babies. A little bit of heartbreak just to add to the pressure. But it put a lot into perspective. While I have been busy fighting against the loss of Stormdancer and making slow progress, we're still afloat and it's almost a week. It was time to tackle this compartment under the quarter berth. And as I get in and started sponging out, I make an interesting discovery. You can see it appearing here. And the coin of phrase, well, there's your problem. A nice, healthy, big gouge through the hull. And you're about to see exactly how I tackled that on the low tide. Now, I know there's going to be people out there that are worried about osmosis and all manner of things from the outside. And that's a valid point. However, osmosis is irrelevant on a sunk boat. Right now, the mission is to avoid sinking, and besides, we have a trick for dealing with the outside. For now, it's all about getting 5 layers of fiberglass in here. And you've all seen fiberglassing done before. There isn't a sailing channel out there that doesn't show how it's done. The only thing you maybe haven't seen is this trick with the blowtorch, which can also be used for warming the compartment to help the resin kick. However, remember, it is flammable. You need to keep that blowtorch well back. Or as they say, don't try this at home, folks. And with that, the hole was fixed and everybody was happy. You're not falling for that, are you? Of course not. That would be way too easy. As soon as I get on board, I see the bilge pumps have been working fine, and then I go to check the compartment where the polystyrene blocks are. And guess what? There was more than one hole in there. Here we go again. Now, you would think when I was in there the first time it would have been easy to spot that there was another hole, but no. When it's full of water, you can't really tell where it's coming from. So basically, it's a case of patch a hole, see what happens, and if it fills up again, then there's got to be another one. And it's off to the races, another 5 layers of fiberglass, and that's 3 holes down. You would think, surely, we're on the home stretch. From the minute the storm started, well, here's a sort of an illustration of how it's felt. I have been busy, so busy that I feel like I met myself on the way back. No, your eyes are not deceiving you. There is yet one more in there. Only this time, thinking with the head, because the feet are for dancing. How about I use the portable power washer to actually do a bit of clean out once and for all in there to see what's going on. It's not like I'm planning on it being full of water for much longer. Meanwhile, as you know, I do these videos for me, for family, and for friends, and for Gen X subscribers that have joined me along the way. The old silverbacks and old sea dogs and grumpy old men. And I don't mind sharing with you that when the channel was monetized, in the course of a year, it earned a whole £6.91. And therefore, we have a lot of the subscribers now are jumping across on the Ko-fi. I'll put a link in the top of the comments. Here's the 4th leak. And yeah, I'm not going to go through the whole rigmarole again. You know exactly what happens. But here's a funny moment. We were so exhausted that when Chris came down to help me, he went on his bangle. So, until next time, folks, believe in the magic of your dreams. Click like, click subscribe, and don't forget to get into the comments. We need you so badly in the comments because that's where the magic happens.